Chapter 14. The twilight air was frigidly oppressive the day Lysone assembled her herbal supplies for the last time. Years ago, she had dug a small, secret cellar under her workshop. She had hidden it from the world and the darkness, all her wisdom in one container. Lifting the cover stones, she pulled out her backpack, the very one she had been banished with so long ago. Inside, everything she had been told to bring. A long rolled scroll of embroidered filter cloth, with pockets sewed widthwise, each holding a day's dose of the sacred herbs. Over the years, she had narrowed that kit down to her 9 most crucial herbs, and the most important, the black seed, made 10. The kit had been put into a primary waterproof bladder, which also held separate, smaller bladders of honey and water. Additionally, her trusty fire starter kit, a handful of household lint to get it going, and just enough kindling, she hoped. The end was folded twice and sealed with beeswax. Also in the pack was a corked gourd of twig tea and a bit of pemmican, just in case she had to buffer her stomach to avoid purging too early. Alongside all that, sealed in another pouch made of oiled, seasoned leather, was Runine's headdress. She hadn't seen it since they arrived in the village, and she had traded for the bag to preserve her friend's gift. Her friend. She put it out of her mind, or it just went, as did many things and words these days. And that was when she knew she had decided it was time to take the sacred walk. She had to do it while she could still find the sea pools, while she could still swim and hold her breath. Leaving the workshop, Lysone waddled over to their home and rested the pack by the door, slipping deftly inside. Thoreau was there, sound asleep, and still so marvelously handsome in her eyes. His skin wrinkled from salt and sun, laughing and crying, squinting and scowling, an entire life set in the sacred clay of his beautiful face. Lysone squatted, then got on one knee and leaned close to kiss his temple, one of her favorite spots. She wanted to sand her palm against his black and white stubble, to watch him smile, groggy and vulnerable as he greeted her with the sun. But she was a medicine keeper, and she had one last journey to take alone. "Forgive me, lover, but it is time, and although you know me, I don't know this yet." "Sleep, my sweet man," she whispered, knowing he would not wake, but confident he still heard her. If Thoreau had known her plan, he would have fought it and tied her down if necessary. But she couldn't do it with him there. It would cloud her inner vision with emotions, with a desire to cling to him which would break her concentration. And it had been so broken lately. Sober memory skips, tools in the wrong place, the meaning of words twisted. She saw the concern on his face, the lack of comprehension, but still, endless compassion. Rising painfully, she tiptoed outside, hoisted the pack, and limped past the garden. Thankfully, the rest of the village slumbered as well. An incoming fog provided her cover, helping her slip away uninterrupted by busybodies. Ignore the skips, she thought, as bits of time and focus fled her mind. Just follow the sunrise, the warm father. The road's compacted dirt soon turned into sand and stone as she left the outskirts of the village. The village. Thoreau. She allowed herself one last, hazy look at her home and instinctively started heading back. But after a few steps she remembered. While I am still here, I can still navigate, she thought stoically, determined again. Turning back to the sound of seabirds, she plodded on towards the cliffs. Along the path, details here and there reminded her of the long journey she and Thoreau had endured. Attacks by man and beast, burning sand, blinding snow, and at times starvation. But he had been right. The sea was an endless bounty, and on the coast, death came only from illness, old age, stupid mistakes, or attacks, for even beggars could fish. After what felt like an eternity, she arrived at the colossal stone arch framing the sea like a carved arm. As Lasoni passed underneath, moving towards the cliff, the salty, pungent ocean air was unmistakable. She could smell the fish gizzards and shucked oysters left by the fishmongers and pearl divers as offerings to the gods. Reaching the edge, a sea breeze blew away the fog, and with help from the herbs, she could still see the distant land across the ocean. She and Thoreau had never made it over there, but that was such a minor regret now. A sudden spray of water drifted up from a wave crashing far below. That made Lasoni laugh like a child, despite the cold surprise shower. Oh, how she loved the ocean, especially the white noise of the waves, often used to meditate or drown out Thoreau when he was stubborn or obnoxious. "What? I can't hear you, love. Sorry." Smirking at her past mischief, she looked at the sky, followed it down to where it met the endless sea. Where was that point, she wondered? How far to reach it? Has anyone ever swam or rafted to it? Was it true it turned into a waterfall dropping into the underworld? Why am I carrying this pack? How did I get here? Then Lasoni was back, embarrassed for going, not to inner space, but to nowhere. Wherever memories went when they dissipated into mist or smoke or... Focus, you old fool, she said, chastising herself into action. Taking the pack off, she placed it softly on the natural stone bench of the sea-fed pools. Inside, she retrieved the bladder, squeezing it again to ensure it was still watertight. She wrinkled her nose at the thought of doing the whole ceremony again. How ironic that her last meal would be this gross. She hated bitter foods, and over the years he consumed a lot more honey than plant medicine, to her shame. Runine would be mad. A far-off memory, Runine laughing and running away, disappearing into the tall grass. "Come back," Lasoni pleaded to the salty air with an outstretched hand. But Runine and the Gray Plains had transformed into rocks, barking seals, and seagull shit. Disappointed but lucid, she remembered her belt pouch, reaching into it with shaky arthritic hands. Twig first," she proclaimed, pulling out 2 of the concentrated tea lumps she had perfected over the years. Those sweet pastilles were boiled down herbal sludge, honey, and a pinch of sea salt to keep mold away. Properly dried, they lasted for many winters. This one was incredibly hard, and Lasoni gnawed at it with her remaining good teeth. The effect was robust, warming, and immediate. Lasoni's mind temporarily sharpened, recalling how lucky she had been to end up on this particular peninsula. Over time, she had befriended the other medicine keepers in the village. They swapped stories and shared the secrets of their own unique herbal preparation methods. It had felt so good to talk freely about ideas, experiments, and experiences surrounding their calling. Despite these easy, casual interactions, she often still felt like an outsider. And much like the Spears and Longlegs, there was an elite group of healers amongst the herbalists, shamans, and religious practitioners. It was unofficial, organically formed, and apolitical, but she still wanted nothing to do with it. However, she was called to the cliffs for a clandestine meeting almost 3 seasons from their arrival. After nearly dying at the hands of so-called healers, she was reluctant to get involved with anything even close to organized religion. But conquering her fears, she joined them and finally learned the greatest of their shared secrets. "Under the water?" Lasoni asked, looking at the 3 pools reflecting the silvery full moon. "Yes," the eldest healer said, smiling and nodding. The rest of the medicine keepers nodded, each understanding the implications. "When it is time, you hold, the painted woman said, sucking in a ragged breath and holding it, but spitting it out quickly due to her advanced age. Some laughed, knowing how it felt to be very wise yet trapped in a failing body. "Then under," another said, making a ducking motion with his muscular frame. "Like the fishing bird," Lasoni said, having seen one dive for its supper before. Yes, they reassured her, "just like the fishing bird." "Then?" "Well," the eldest continued, "then there is nothing left to do but unblock the sun. Adorn yourself and use the herbs. Burn incense and cleanse with the smoke. Then lastly, block the sun again." "Block the sun? How does one block the Father? Impossible. And why would the sun be inside a cave?" "But if no one ever returns, how do you know this is the way?" Lasoni asked, her brow scrunched. "The first time there was a helper, an apprentice, a witness. The helper returned and told how. This is simply the way of it, our tradition, you see." Lasoni still didn't see, and she couldn't imagine being a wise elder and ending her journey like that. After all, spears died on their feet. "Oh, but you are not a spear," the elder somehow pulled from her mind. "You are a bird, yes?" Lasoni's heart practically stopped. "How?" The circle laughed empathically, but the elder got very serious. "There is more to your story, Lasoni. You are not just a bird after all. You are above that, beyond the sky. A navigator like us, yes? And navigators are neither here nor there, but everywhere. You will see when it is time." The elder had been right. Lasoni's ardent life of ceremonies and spiritual work had finally taught her what that role meant. Navigator. A word so foreign to her when she heard it the first time in that despicable, terrible temple, where Runine was trapped, murdered, and defiled. Back in the present, Lasoni swallowed the rest of the tea lozenge whole, hoping it would chase down the sad lump of memories in her throat. One last thing. Reaching into the pack, Lasoni took out the charm Thero had made her. It was a root he had found, growing around a stone. He had carved it into a likeness of a man and a woman. He always said it was their love smoothing out the roughness of life. Tears fell from her eyes, the twig turning them into jeweled rainbow spheres, splashing like glitter on the keepsake. Standing up, she put on the pack and lay the love token on the pool's lip. Lasoni knew that Thoreau would come looking for her and eventually find it, perhaps later that day. She had started spending mornings alone here, training him to make the association. He would never discover the secret cave or find her body, but he would know that she loved him and had to go. She told herself Thoreau would understand and forgive her with time. Turning, she stepped to the edge of the cliff. It was at transition time, when the sun put his lover, the moon, to bed each day. Lasoni's last moon. Squinting at the dawn and the rocks below, she wanted gravity to do her dirty work. It would be so much easier to throw herself off, to just know. Reluctantly, painfully, she turned from the golden sunrise, the incredible warmth so soothing on her aching back. "Now to it, Lasoni, navigator," she shouted, defying the ravages of time and invoking a moment she had prepared for her entire life, ever since she woke up in that mud puddle. Remembering the sequence, she sat down on the pool's edge, swinging both legs over. Holding on to the rim, Lasoni plunged in feet first. The cold nearly took her life prematurely, and she laughed at all the curse words she had not forgotten and which still sounded sweet to her ears. With great effort, she steadied her mind, took a deep breath, and then disappeared below, descending into the secret tunnel.